What's up, YouTube? This is GiantJabov3 here. I want to go over all of the items for Junker Queen and the commons as well under weapon, ability, and survival. I won't be going over the powers, but I will be mentioning them a lot. So if you guys don't know what these do, maybe go into the practice range and just try them out a little bit, read them. But let's go ahead and start off with weapon commons. So we have Compensator, Plasma Converter, and Weapon Grease. So these are all fine values. They each have their different niches. I will say between power and lifesteal, whether it's weapon or ability, if you have a attack or ability or whatever that uses a lot of wound, you want power because the wound scales with damage, and then that ends up helping you out more with your wound damage. However, if you are just shooting your gun or a carnage that has high impact, right, you will want weapon lifesteal. This will actually give you more health. I think overall I do prefer power over lifesteal, but if you're going for a survival build, I do see a need for lifesteal. Attack speed, this one's interesting. So, if you have royal bullets and you shoot someone in the head twice, it does not stack. Instead, it refreshes the timer. And so, it does not help royal bullets. However, on the other hand, it does help twist the knife, which like it triggers by the same effect of shooting with a headshot with your scattergun. Which also, by the way, one nice thing about Twist the Knife is that it's not limited to the 15 meters. If you shoot them in the head once and they start fleeing and you shoot them from a far distance, as long as it's a headshot, you still get Twist the Knife. So, having attack speed does help with Twist the Knife because as they're trying to escape, you can get those lingering shots. And as long as they don't cleanse themselves, it is a nice thing to have. So, but there are a lot of cleansers, so keep that in mind. Attack speed does have its use, but I personally don't go for this because I usually just go for royal bullets myself. Ammo reserves. There's probably some build out there that uses a bunch of ammo and then has those later items that say whenever you do XYZ, refresh some ammo. I haven't gotten this one to really work for me. I don't really like ammo reserves. I'm moving on. If you have a build, let me know. I would love to see it. Frenzy Amplifier, this one is kind of a trap. So the reason why I say it's kind of a trap is if you are going a let's go win build and you can snowball, right? This requires two things. Either your enemy needs to make a bad play that you capitalize off of, or you're essentially one-shotting anyway, in which case, do you really need the snowball because you're already like murdering everyone? Maybe if you are murdering a specific person on the enemy team, you can get away with it. But Frenzy Amplifier requires you to already kind of be winning. Maybe it's like you guys trade, right? It becomes a 4 versus 4, and now you have the advantage. So, in the early rounds, if you can't guarantee that you get the eliminations, maybe don't go for Frenzy Amplifier. I do have one that I really like as a substitute. But in later rounds, if you're like, yeah, we're fucking steamrolling them, or like, this is what I'm doing, then yeah, go for Frenzy Amplifier. It is really nice for the attack speed and the movement speed. Going over to Weapon Rare, we have Aftermarket Firing Pin. 10% attack speed. You already know my dilemma with attack speed. There is a build I will talk about later, but we'll get there. But the movement speed on this one is so nice. Anything to help you get in, whether it's a Carnage build or a Merciless Magnetism, and you just need to get within the range, or like even if you're doing a Royal Bullets one that needs to be within the range, or maybe like a Reckoner's Roar. What's nice about this one as well is it's one of those random 750 ones, so that if the math doesn't math, like let's say you had like some number and then 800 at the end of it, you can get this one and get more value out of it rather than just having like 800 extra cash or like 300 extra cash if you go like the 500 ones. So this one definitely has its niche, and it's definitely good early game. And there is a build I kind of want to talk about later for this one, so we'll get back to this later. Advanced Antibiotics. So after healing an ally, gain 10% attack speed, which there are so many ways to heal an ally. Fun fact, you yourself are an ally. So if you have royal bullets, or like you're doing any sort of wound, or you even have weapon lifesteal, or ability lifesteal, which you don't need ability lifesteal because you're doing wound all the fucking time. You gain that attack speed essentially permanently. So, kind of nice. Do consider it, but if you're going like weapon power and like royal bullets, again, keep in mind that the attack speed actually does hinder you a little bit. You don't get as much health, but that's neither here nor there situation. Shield Buster. After dealing damage to shields and armor, gain 15% attack speed. This is nice versus certain matchups. Reinhardt, Sigma, Zarya, Diva in particular. But it's up to you. Usually, if I have a lot of attack speed, this is on armored targets, kind of a difficult one. If you have maybe like Codebreaker, go for that. But the one against Sigma is pretty nice, though Sigma has plenty of ways of like pausing you from shooting a lot. So up to you on Shield Buster. It's not bad. It's not amazing. It's just kind of there. If you have the cash for it, go for it. Stockpile. Again, if you have a ammo reserves one, there's probably some build for it. Comment below, maybe. I don't know. And like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like if you're investing in ammo, you're not investing in weapon power in order to actually get the kills. Maybe there's some sort of like heal build where you just constantly shoot, but I don't know. I don't know how I feel about the weapon ammo. So let me know what you think about it. Emergency chip. While you are below 150 life, gain 50% weapon life steal. If you were not a tank, I would recommend this. Now, there's probably some niche for this of like, there's some like survival stuff that's like when you're below a certain amount of health, gain damage reduction. And so there might be a way that you're always constantly at like low health and you refuse to go like lower. This one would need more experimenting. If you have a build for it, let me know. But I wouldn't put this in my final build. This would more be for like the earlier rounds where you do only have 520 health. Because this would end up being about like somewhere between like a third and like a fifth or something like that. Maybe like a fourth, whatever. But anyway, I'd still say it's somewhat niche. Technoleech, this one speaks for itself. I think it's good. The price is like a little on the pricier side because it does have like that 500 at the end. But you can usually afford it by like the second round. I like to go for it. Yeah, just recommendation. I will say, however, do the math. If you're getting 5% weapon power and 10% weapon lifesteal, and you can just go for these two. Like if you have like the slots, these two just end up being this. So like, be smart about the math. Icy Coolant, 10% weapon power and 5% cooldown reduction. Now, kind of like Technoleech, it does speak for itself, and you can just go for something like Compensator or whatever. It doesn't give as much weapon power, but what's also nice about this one is the cooldown reduction. 5% might not sound like a lot, but it does add up if you have enough cooldown reduction stuff. Plus, it's somewhat cheap. It's like on like the pricier side of rare, but you can get a bunch of cooldown reduction if you have Cut 'em Up Gracie. You can essentially make so every time you throw Gracie and land it on someone, as soon as it returns back to you, you can just throw it again. And you don't need that much cooldown reduction if you have Cut 'em Up Gracie. So keep that in mind. This does kind of work well with that. Talent modification module. This would seem nice if it wasn't like so pricey. I think by the time I can afford this, it's better just to go for like a purple. But if I happen to have 5 slots done and I have 6K, maybe I'll go for it or something like that. But I do think it's like more on like the pricey side, but it speaks for itself. It's just 15% weapon power, which is pretty nice. Gut Punch Gauntlet. I have tried to make a build around this. I think it's kind of bait. While you're not holding Jagged Blade, Quick Melee does 70% more damage and knocks back. What you can do is Jagged Blade, throw it into the enemy, who's right next to you, by the way, like shotgun distance, like right next to them. Melee them, they go push back a little bit. You pull them back with Jagged Blade Gracie, and then you punch them again. Or if you go a fast, mobile, high attack speed build, melee does scale with weapon power and attack speed. You can kind of just keep punching them, and maybe like push them off a map. It is kind of funny, but how many maps can you really push someone off? Plus, if you're basing your whole build around it, maybe they'll go something to reduce knockback. So if you have a build for this, let me know. But the fact that it's also a blue item doesn't appeal to me because by the time it's like round 5 or whatever, I can't use this item. So I think it's really funny. But Blizzard, if you're listening to me, um, if nothing else, have a epic version of this. That way we could actually continue using it and it'd be really funny. But as far as its own rare item, I don't think it's worth building around. Monarch's Decree is nice. Commanding Shout grants you 50% attack speed. If you have Let's Go Win and you're going for a steamroll build, you can pair it up with something like Frenzy Amplifier and then just kind of shout, kill someone, shout, next person, shout, whatever, and that's nice. So do what you will with this, but I think unless you're going a Let's Go Win build, I don't like it. Going over to the weapon epics. Codebreaker, ignore 50% of armor's damage reduction. If you were going a pure scattergun build, this is nice because the damage reduction sucks. However, I will say wound damage does chip through armor and it does not get reduced by armor. So all of your wound damage that you're doing will do its max damage. Now I will say if you're using something like what do you call it? Like Gracie, well, actually, no. What was that? I don't believe this wound damage gets like reduced down. So, I'm not sure if Codebreaker is really worth it on Queen specifically. If you're going at least Royal Bullets, but if you're not going Royal Bullets and you're going like some like other wound stuff and you're going Twist the Knife and maybe invest in it, but I think this is not a Queen item. Just throwing that out there. Going over to Salvage Slugs, this one says you do increase damage to barriers and you have a chance to reload your ammo whenever you are shooting a barrier. I think if you really have an issue with barriers, like you have Carnage, which goes through Reinhardt barrier, Sigma barrier. I don't really want to charge up a Zarya either. And like if you have like a Junkrat, just tell them to go Salvage Slugs, and like that'll do a shit ton more damage, and it's way more effective. So I personally wouldn't go Salvage Slugs myself, but you can try it and maybe go for like a build where all you do is get rid of their barrier. I don't know. Sigma would just probably put it down and put up Flux. And then Reinhardt, once you get past his barrier, you have his armor to deal with. And at that point, if you're close enough, you'll probably just use Carnage anyway. So I don't know about those guys. Volskaya Ordnance. Deal 5% increased weapon damage for every 100 life the target has more than you. You are a tank. It is rare that you will have less health than the other enemy, except for the other tank. And if the other tank is investing in a bunch of health and stuff, they're probably not investing in damage. So I don't know if this is even worth it, on Queen at least. Aerial Distressor. This one is a sleeper. So it says weapon damage to airborne enemies deals 25% bonus damage over 3 seconds. I have tested it out. If you Jagged Blade pull them at the peak of their arc of being pulled towards you, they are affected by Aerial Distressor. So if you can get 2 quick shots in, which the attack speed is actually helping out here, you can do a bit of damage. So this would be a nice Jagged Blade combination build. So keep this in mind. It might actually be useful. Commander's Clip. This one says 10% attack speed, 4% ammo, and when you use an ability, restore 10% of your max ammo. Now, I did shit on stockpile and ammo reserves before. What I think is different about this guy, it says when you use an ability. If you are going a Jagged Blade build where you can pull someone in and shoot them twice, and then cut them up Gracie to get that ability just constantly going, and maybe like cooldown reductions, this is actually potentially viable, but I don't see it being used in any other case. So, like, even if you have Let's Go Win, because of the nerf where it's only 50% and not 100% cooldown reduction, I don't see you spamming abilities as much. So this is a Jagged Blade only build. I'll come up with one soon. I'm still actually testing around. I'll show my builds in another video, but still working on that. Weapon Jammer, this one's a sleeper where when you deal damage, it negates 10% of the target's bonus attack speed and increases your attack speed by 10% for 2 seconds. So as long as you just shoot them with your gun, you are lowering their attack speed, which is kind of nice against sometimes like Reinhardt's when they have like the just swing build or whatever. But it's also situational. If they don't have increased attack speed, then that you don't actually get much out of this. But if you actually like look at the scoreboard and check their builds, you can actually see if they're invested in attack speed like at all. So that's nice. Amari's Antidote. This one's also a sleeper in my opinion. While healing an ally below 50% health, remember you are an ally. With your weapon, deal 15% increased weapon healing. If you were going a pure scattergun build, or even sometimes if you're going a mixed build, but this is mostly for a pure scattergun build with royal bullets, you are an ally. When you're below 50% health, your wound does extra healing, and it's kind of nice. So if you're going for a more survival build, definitely consider Amari's Antidote. 50% weapon power is also nice, you know, on its own. And because you're increasing your health with that 25 health, the 50% mark for your life gets increased. And so keep this in mind. Jet Boosters. This one has potential with the other one. So when you use an ability, gain 10% movement speed for 2 seconds. If you're going a Jagged Blade build, you can abuse the when you use an ability to keep getting this movement speed. You move really fast. Attack speed is kind of nice because then you can hit someone in the air multiple times and just deal a ton of damage. Yeah, I will come up with a build for this later, but it is pricey. And I don't know how to really make it in the lower thing, so I will be working on that. El Saka Suppressor. Critical hits apply 30% healing reduction to a target for 2 seconds. If you are going a Royal Bullets build, or technically even a Twist the Knife build, this is really nice because you can reduce the healing reduction for 2 seconds, and you're already going for headshots anyway. However, if you're going for a Jagged Blade build, this is also still nice because you are applying a 30% healing reduction. Now, I will say that this does not stack with a Cyber Venom, which also does a 30% healing reduction. But if your Moira is going for like Cyber Venom or something like that, you know, you can go for this. I don't believe they stack either if it's a different person, but if they go for like the movement speed one instead of like liquid nitrogen, then you can go for this one on your scattergun build, and then you guys get both effects, and it's pretty nice. So for a scattergun build, I like this one. Hardlight Accelerator. When you use an ability, gain 5% weapon power for 3 seconds, stack up to 3 times. As a queen, you can't spam your abilities as fast as you would like. I've tried to do this with Cut 'em Up Gracie, like Chop, stuff like that. But like at that point, I just end up using the abilities more. There's so much wind-up time in Carnage that I just wasn't able to get that like 5 stack of weapon power. So if you can get this to work, great. The 10% cooldown reduction is also nice. But I couldn't really use it for Queen, so I would pass on this one. It's pretty pricey, and there's other options you can go for. Eye of the Spider. Deal 10% increased damage to enemies below 30% life. If you are going for a scattergun build, this one is really nice because it's a tank buster at some point. You won't really get that 30%, the 30 health on the 10% increased health, whatever thingy. Damage increase on a squishy more or less. If you like 2-shot him or whatever, you know, but like maybe like a Mei, I can kind of see like a tank Mei build. But tank buster at some point, I do like this one for that. So, but if you're going for a kill the backline kind of thing, the 25% weapon power is still nice. Closer. This one has a really niche but nice effect. Critical hits reveal the target for 3 seconds. There is no distance cap on this. This is not like Royal Bullets where it has to be 15. It's more like Twist the Knife where it's unlimited. And so if you shoot someone from across the map, you can see where they're going. And information is so nice in this mode because there's so many routes that someone can go. You can see if they're like waiting to come back or if they're just actually like changing places. So if you're going a scattergun only build, go for this one. And I'm saying scattergun only because I do have a flex build that at some point just stops using the weapon category altogether. Shred and Lead. When you wound an enemy, gain 10% attack speed for 4 seconds, up to 3 times. This one is a bit misleading. When you wound an enemy, I believe, and I could be wrong, I'm not sure if Blizzard changed this, the wound has to be a different wound. So if you refresh a wound, it does not count. If you go scatter Royal Bolts and you shoot him in the head over and over again, it does not increase your attack speed. But if you were to scattergun, Royal Bullets, and then hit him with Gracie, that is a new wound on an enemy, and therefore you get an attack speed bonus. So if they shadow buffed it, great, but from what I tried it, it's really hard to get it. Plus, it doesn't actually increase your damage. So it is more for a living, longer kind of situation with the life steal and stuff. So I personally don't like Shred and Lead. But if you try and you like it, go for it. Again, usually by this point, I'm going for a mixed build, not a pure weapon build, so I don't usually go Shred and Lead. Bloodhound Mask can be nice. If you go Reckoner's Roar with, like, Royal Bullets, right? You shout one time. If you happen to get all 5 of them, which I honestly doubt, at most I usually get 3, but let's say you get 5, you get that 25% plus a 15%, which is a 40% weapon power buff, which is crazy ridiculous. Now, if you get 3, that's still nice. You now get the 15 plus 15, so that's a 30% weapon power increase, which is a lot. But at some point, if you are investing in Reckoner's Roar, you're going for ability power, and there's kind of nice other things there. The other way you can get this to work is if you kind of shoot everyone differently, which, like, the wounds last for like 3 seconds, so like it's a different play style, and it's kind of hard to shoot past the tank. If I'm shooting a squishy behind, at some point I'm kind of like trying to focus on killing the squishy, but if you can hit multiple people, then you get that increased weapon power, and it's kind of nice. But it is hard to use, so keep that in mind. We are on to the abilities now. So starting with the common, we have Charge Plating. After you spend your ultimate charge, gain 25 armor and 10% ability power for the rest of the round. The saving grace of this one common item is that it is only 1,000. If this was any more, I would not pay for it. But there's only like a few ways in like the early rounds to raise your ability power. And if you already have them, then this is a nice alternative. However, Queen's ult charge does take a long time, and so I find it really hard to get this. However, late game, if I or not like mid to late game, if I already have this and I have an extra slot and like 1,000 extra cash, I will go for this, and I can generate my ult charge somewhat fast. And so for the second half of the round, I can probably use the actual 10% ability power and armor. However, on Queen, I wouldn't normally go Charge Plating. This one seems more like a Moira kind of common item, so I wouldn't go for it on Queen unless you happen to have the extra cash. 10% ability power, it's just good. You already heard my rant from the weapon power section of weapon power versus weapon lifesteal. So now ability power versus weapon lifesteal. If you're going a Carnage build, go for ability power for the impact damage plus the extra wound damage that you get. If you are going a Gracie build, though, if you miss the Gracie, if you get an indirect hit, you will want ability lifesteal. However, we're not trying to get indirect hits. We're trying to get direct hits. So I would just go for ability power. This is nice though, because there's no like attack speed kind of thing. So this does end up being like a good combination for like the early game and stuff. Winning attitude. When you die, gain 50% ult charge. Why are we planning on dying? This sounds bad. Now there are survival things that are like, when you die, you can get rezzed again, right? And so if you go hella aggressive and you get like 85% ult charge, but you die, and then you wait those 3 seconds and come back, then you get this guy and you get that 50% ult charge. I do believe that works. but just don't plan on dying. So I don't like this guy. Going to the ability rares, custom stock. The 750 is so nice because it just works out, and this works for a mixed build. It works for just a ability thing because like you can just go for it, and you happen to get the weapon power. It works for weapon power because you get like a little bit of ability. It helps like your shout like a little bit and stuff like that. So I just really like custom stock. Biolite Overflow. When you spend your ultimate charge, nearby allies gain 75 overhealth for 3 seconds. If you got your ultimate faster, I would go for this. But because, again, same thing as charge plate, you don't get it nearly as fast. I don't like this. So moving on from there. Energized Bracers. Every time I go for any ability power thing, I just go for this one. It's nice. You get a bunch of benefit off of it. It's the same as having these two. So yeah, it speaks for itself. Junker Whatchamajig. This one is a sleeper pick. No one is expecting you to get your ult charge so fast. Everyone's going to think, oh, the enemy queen's doing so good. How do they do it? It's not that. But if you do go Whatchamajig, you can go charge plating and no one sees that coming. But keep in mind that this doesn't actually help you gain ult charge more afterward. So you could be going for something like more like ability power or weapon ability lifesteal, because healing does give you your ult charge more, right? So it is a sleeper pick. However, I would only go for this if you like really have like extra slots or you're going for a surprise factor. However, I prefer the more consistency of the other items. Wrist wraps. This one's weird. 5% ability power, 10% attack speed. If you're going for like the jagged blade build I was talking about before, where like you jagged blade, pull them in, and you shoot them really fast, I guess, sure. Otherwise, I don't see a point for this. Multi-tool. The cooldown reduction is useful. The ability power is also nice. It speaks for itself. Decent 450. Go for it if you want to. Vitality Amplifier. This one's weird. When you are above 80% life, gain 10% ability power. So notice how like when I'm hovering over it, it says I'm at 550. What is 80% of that? Like 400-ish health? So like you have the ability lifesteal, and then you gain more ability power, and you're also healing yourself a lot. So this does have potential to keep you at full health a lot, but I haven't had a build for it yet. Maybe a survival build. It's kind of niche-ish. If you have a build for it, let me know. But it's one of those weird ones where like I would rather just go for the ability power kind of stuff. So there is a niche for it though. There is potential. Nano Cola, this one's so good. If you've ever used any ability power stuff and you're like, I have one slot left, and you're like, I have at least 6K, go for it. Like it's good for its value. Now I will say, if you have 8,000 cash, right? You could go for like these two guys, and you end up with just as much ability power plus other stuff. Or like even like no, I guess it's only 15, right? But you can go for like this. I'll talk about it like later. But you can go for these two and get more out of it. But if you have 8K and you have extra slots, you can also go for like the Nano Cola here, and then the Power Playbook here, and then maybe like Shady Spectacles if you have another slot for it. But it's math is math. If you have 7,000, definitely go for these two. And if you have 8,000, maybe go for like these two. But moving on, bigger magnet. 10% ability power, which is nice on its own because, but the Jagged Blade pull strength increased by 35%. People don't see it coming. You will pull someone and they'll be like, oh, I can probably still live it. I'm fine. And then they get pulled incredibly far into your team. If you pull and duck, or if they're on like the high ground and you pull them off, they will go past you. If they're trying to use an ability to try to get back, they might not even be able to unless they react fast enough, in which case they just die. So surprise factors there. The 10% ability power is nice. Yeah, decent item overall. Now for the ability epics. Sonic Recharger. Passive life regeneration, can overheal up to 75. It gives you 10% ability power. I would never go this one. The life passive got somewhat nerfed in this recent season, where I believe it's only after like 6 or 7 seconds where it starts to heal you. And like 75 overhealth isn't even a lot, especially for a tank. So I wouldn't even consider. I think this is a trap. 3 tap Tommy gun. This one is interesting. So after using an ability, your next 3 instances of weapon damage deal an additional damage equal to 3% of the target's life. So 3% of the target's life makes it sound like a tank buster. This item is really good for like a Juno who hits 1, 2, 3 every time she shoots. Queen shoots one kind of instance of scattergun. So you're only really doing like after using an ability 9 more like percent more damage. And like your gun doesn't shoot as fast now. That's why they have attack speed. So if you're going like that one jagged blade build I was talking about before, maybe this could be nice. But I think that there are better options on Queen specifically. So, yeah, this is also like good for like Moira or like maybe like beam characters who have a bunch of abilities or something like that. But yeah, I wouldn't put this on Queen. Biotech Maximizer. This one sucks for the wrong reasons. When you use an ability that heals, reduce its cooldown by 5% for each unique ally it heals. I don't know why this is not a thing. If you have Thrill of Battle, it says Adrenaline Rush also heals your nearby allies. That does not apply for Biotech Maximizer, and I'm pretty sure the logic is how many people is your one specific weapon or ability or whatever healing for, right? So Jagged Blade technically heals you, and then your passive heals your allies. So at most, you're only healing 5% for yourself, and therefore your teammates don't get the benefit. If it did work where Thrill of Battle did work with Biotech Maximizer, that would be amazing. And you could go something like Reckoner's Roar in order to make your shout end up healing people. And there's something in survival as well. Actually, I'll go ahead and skip forward to it. This guy says Undying Loyalty. Affected allies by commanding shout are healed for 5% of Junker Queen's thing. It also doesn't work with that, and I don't know why. So, you just, yeah, it's bad for the wrong reasons. If it did work, it might be broken. So I kind of see why it doesn't, but I don't like their wording on it. So for that, I'm giving this one a pass. Catalytic Crystal, this one is incredibly good, especially if you're like, hey, I do want to use Charge Plating, or I do want to use Biolite. I still wouldn't use Biolite Overflow, but now it's an option. But ability damage and healing grants 20% more ultimate charge. I have gone a Jagged Blade build where I just Blade Parade, hit him a bunch, cut him up Gracie, cooldown reduction, and I got so much ult charge that I got like my ults essentially every fight. So this one's really good. Even outside of that, if you go like a chop build, I would still go Catalytic Crystal. It's pretty cheap for what it does, so I like it. Lumerico Fusion Drive. It gives you 50 armor and then 50% ability power, and whenever you use an ability, restore 50 armor or shields. Because it gives you 50 armor, that is incredibly nice, because if it didn't give you that, it would actually not work for Queen. You'd have to invest in something else as well. But if you go a cut 'em up Gracie build, or maybe like a Let's Go Win build, you use your abilities a lot. Even Chop use your abilities a lot, right? And you can get that armor and shields over and over again. And if you're versing a Queen, she will constantly have to shoot into that like tiny bit of armor, which is kind of nice. It doesn't really do a lot of reduction, but like it's just kind of more annoyance. They're not going to invest in Codebreaker, let's be real. So the little bit of scattergun damage that gets reduced is kind of nice. But like this is also nice against like a Reaper or whatever. Just gives yourself, it heals yourself, so it's like a survival kind of item. So for anything where you reduce your cooldown, I do recommend Lumerico Fusion Drive, especially cut 'em up Gracie. Super Flexor, this one is so slept on. Listen. I see that it says 10% weapon power. It is not about that 10% weapon power. The 10% weapon power is just cream of the crop, right? When you deal weapon damage or healing, gain 5% ability power for 3 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. If you go Royal Bullets and you shoot them in the head 1 time, the wounds count as weapon damage. And so you shoot them once and you instantly go to the 5%, so for the 5 stack, which is a 25% ability power. What else in all of these gives you 25% ability power? I'll give you a hint. Champions Kit's fucking broken. But it used to also be Booming Voice, but they reduced it. So, Super Flexor is incredibly good if you have Royal Bullets. If you don't have Royal Bullets, then I don't like Super Flexor. You can still go it if you have like the attack speed, I suppose. But then it's like boom, 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 boom. You have like the 5, and like now you only have like 3 shots left, unless you have like ammo, which you shouldn't be doing because you should be investing in ability power. Then you toss all your shit like Carnage and Gracie and stuff. So again, Royal Bullets flex build, so fucking good. Cyber Venom, dealing ability damage, applies a 30% healing reduction. If you're going purely chop chop, I like this one. Now I would rather like your supports with some ability power go this, but 10% ability power plus 5% cooldown reduction is nice. And so you chop someone, does a ton of damage, they're gonna have a hard time healing it unless they cleanse it, and then you go in for like another kill. So I do like Cyber Venom. Iridescent Iris. After spending your ultimate charge, gain 100 overhealth for 3 seconds. Ignore that. The overhealth is nice. Don't get me wrong. But the 20% ability power and the 10% cooldown reduction is what you're looking at. That is where a majority of the value of this item comes from. Again, if like nothing compares to this 25, the next closest thing is this 20. And so the 100 overhealth is just a cherry on top kind of situation. But I do recommend going Iridescent Iris for the ability power and the cooldown reduction. If you're going any kind of ability power build, go for this. Liquid Nitrogen, dealing ability damage, slows the target's movement by 20% for 3 seconds. As a chop build, if you don't want them to escape, I can see that. And for a Jagged Blade, if you don't want them to escape you as well, I can see that. So it's up to you. If you have like a Moira or something like that going or build with Cyber Venom, then you can go Liquid Nitrogen and just kind of like seal the kill. But because it's only like 10% ability power, that's what sways me from like maybe not. But there is definitely uses for Liquid Nitrogen. It's not a bad item at all, but it's not the first one I would go for. Mark of Kitsune. This one's so good. If you use an ability, your next instance of weapon damage and healing deals 25% bonus damage or healing. So if you have a low cooldown, let's say Gracie, let's say Chop, your next gunshot does a lot. So even if you're not in a gun build, swing your Carnage once, let the Carnage wound go. Like don't chop a second time, right? Because the Carnage wounds won't stack. It just refreshes it, right? You're doing the Carnage damage and wound, right? And then you shoot him with your gun. That's so much damage. Now you wind up again, and which is like another second of like wind up time, right? And then you just do so much damage. Plus, if you're going a Jagged Blade build where you throw your knife, shoot him, shout, shoot him, like in between all your other abilities, this one ends up doing a ton of damage, so I really recommend it. Champions Kit, 35% ability power, really good if you want that ability power. Doesn't do anything else, y'all already know. Tinkering Tracksuit, this one says Rampaging Carnage grant 10% attack speed for 4 seconds. This one's awkward. I don't like this. It tries too much to be too many different things. A cooldown reduction, ability, lifesteal, Rampaging Carnage. I would rather just go something that would get me Rampage more often. The nice thing about this one, though, is that, like, if you Carnage and then you, like, do Mark of Kitsune, right, you can go, like, shoot twice and then Carnage again. But I usually just don't end up going for this. There are too many other things The nice thing about this one, though, that I will say is the cost is not that much. It's only 950. So if you happen to have a slot left, maybe go for it. But usually I'll go for something else that's better. Booming Voice, the 50% commanding shout radius and affects allies out of line of sight is nice because you can go something like Reckoner's Roar and get all your teammates. Or if you end up, again, going Undying on Loyalty and healing your allies there, it will also affect them. And because of the change in base game where Shout is 4 seconds for you, but also 4 seconds for your allies, this one kind of got slightly buffed in that it helps out your allies a lot more than you got nerfed yourself with that 1 second reduction. So I do like Booming Voice. Plus 15% ability power is also nice, and it's somewhat cheap-ish compared to like Champion's Kit, or actually I guess it's pretty expensive, but compared to some other stuff, it's pretty cheapish. Like if you go to weapons and stuff, it's cheaper than that. All right, now going to the survival tab. In common, if okay, so electrolytes. At the start of the round, every time you respawn, gain 100 unrecoverable overhealth. Unless you're like you plan on dying as a tank, which you shouldn't, and you have like a mercy to like pocket you, or you go with like a bunch of like respawn stuff. This one isn't worth it, so I'm just gonna move on. Field of Action as well. On the restore 8 health every 1 second. You are a tank. This is like piss health to you, so like I would skip it. Don't go for this. Running Shoes. Another one of those. Whenever you respawn, start of the round ones. It's not worth it. I'm not even gonna waste my breath. I'm moving on. Adrenaline Shot. Health packs grant 20% movement speed for 5 seconds and 50 overhealth. 20% movement speed is a ton. Do not get me wrong. But you have to keep in mind, you have to touch a health pack, and you have to know where the health packs are. Usually they're out of your way, not like directly in the middle of a fight. And as the tank, you might want to consider. Plus, in order to pick up the health pack, you need to have taken damage. So, for that one, I will pass on this one. Maybe like a Soldier 76 with like movement speed would like this, but not a Queen. So, Armored Vest, 25 armor. That's it. For a 1,500 costing item, I think you could go for this. It's not a bad option. It's not a lot of armor, to be honest. But like, if you have the extra cash and you want armor for some reason, like in like a matchup or something like that, then yeah, sure, go for it. That's fine. First Aid Kit. Reduce the time your life begins to regenerate by 33%. You don't have shields really, and so like you do also like a lot of like self regenerating from like your wounds and stuff. I just don't see a use for this. You're also playing in the front lines a lot, so you will be taking the damage. I don't get the health regeneration a lot, so I'm gonna move on from that. Heartbeat sensor, 5% movement speed, and enemies below 30% life are revealed to you. Listen to me. This one is incredibly underrated. I love this one so much. I have been now first round been going heartbeat sensor with like either ability power stuff or weapon power stuff or whatever, right? The 30% life revealed to you has no distance cap. And so with the 5% movement speed just being good on its own, now you have extra information. If someone says Lucio's 1, you no longer have to be like, where's Lucio? Just look around and you can see where Lucio is. It is so good. I go this one late game too. Like if I happen to have like an extra slot or extra cash, I go this one. If I don't have a slot, it's whatever, right? But I really recommend this one. Siphon Gloves. Quick melee damage heals for 25 health. If you're a tank, it doesn't do it enough, to be honest. I kind of wish it's at like a certain percentage of your life it would heal, but instead it says 25 flat out health. So I think it is a scam. Also, because you need to invest in attack speed in order to like quickly stab someone multiple times, you're not gonna get this healing a lot. So moving on from here. Going to survival rare, cushioned padding. It says 4% reduced incoming negative effect duration, and then while affected by a stun, sleep, or hinder, restore 10% of your max life for over 3 seconds. This one, first of all, just has a great freaking ability, right? If you're versing like an Ana with purples, or like a Sleep Dart, or a Orisa, Sigma, Junkrat, um, this is all helpful for those kinds of things. Plus, like the 10% max of your health, over time you'll be gaining like a bunch of health, right? So it does do a lot of healing, and it's also the random 750 like cost, and so you can help out with the math, and like actually get this one. So I do really recommend this one as a counter pick option. Reinforced titanium. When you have shields, gain 15% reduced ability damage. So my issue with this one is that your health goes white health, so like regular health, then armor, then shields. The first thing to go away will be your shields, and so you won't really get the benefit of this very often. So I don't like this. So I would say it's a pass. If you were like a Zarya or a Sigma who happens to have a lot of shield to begin with, great, but not as Queen. Iron Eyes. Take 20% reduced damage from critical hits. I don't know if the enemy team's critical hitting me, so I just pass. I don't know. I think it's a weird one. Now, if it's like you can kind of tell if the Soldier 76 and the Cassidy are always getting headshots, they're cheating. I don't know. Maybe go for this one, but I don't see a use for this. Ironclad exhaust ports. When you use an ability, gain 25 overhealth for 3 seconds. If you go cut them up Gracie and you have a bunch of cooldown reduction, which this also cooldown reduces, you can get a good amount of overhealth over time. So it's not bad. It's like a more mid-game kind of thing where you have your things set up and you want that cooldown reduction. I wouldn't go for this late game because 25 overhealth is like nothing, but keep it in the back of your head. Vishkar Condenser. Convert 100 health to shields. Not worth it. Again, if you already had shields or whatever, it'd be great. But the fact that it's converting and shields don't actually reduce anything, I don't think it's worth it ever. Vital ET. Convert 100 health into armor. This one, however, is worth it. Because it reduces damage against like beams, so like Zarya and Mei. There's also a bunch of things to help you, like Lumerico's fusion driver, to give you armor over time. And so I like Vitality. Plus, you can combine it with the next one of Crusader's Hydraulics, where when you have armor, take 10% reduced weapon damage. Now, the issue is that these guys take up a bunch of slots, so this is purely for a survival build to kind of like be a distraction, but not actually do anything. And so that's kind of like my issue with it, but you do get a decent amount of armor, so keep that in mind. Or damage reduction. Mecha Z series, this is the most random 5,000 cost. I don't think there's another 5,000 cost in the entire game, like the list of things, at least for Queen. And so if you happen to have exactly 5,000 left, this would give you the exact value, and you would just end up being with like 8% more health, armor, and shields, which isn't anything to scoff at. It's pretty good. If I am at 525, I go to 567, which is like what, 40-ish increase. So keep this in mind. It's not horrible. It's just like a random 5,000 that you can use. Dez's damage dampeners. Anti-Lucio, anti-Orisa, anti-Sigma. Whenever you get knocked back, gain 25% increased movement speed for 3 seconds. Really freaking good. Especially if you're going a chop build. At some point, they're going to want to just kind of stop you from approaching them. So I do recommend this one if you are versing one of those. It's a counter pick item. Rebellious Spirit. When wound gets removed instead of expiring, gain 10% of max life as overhealth up to 150. So if you're versing a Zarya, a Kiriko, a Mei, a Reaper, a Moira, those all cleanse themselves, and therefore the wound gets removed. So if you get it on, let's say, Royal Bullets, then they cleanse that. You just shoot them again. It's so good, right? And then if you go something like Gracie or whatever, like cut him up Gracie, you can just do it a lot. So this does end up giving you a lot of overhealth, and it goes health, armor, shields, overhealth. So if you have something like Crusader's Hydraulics, you do still get that weapon reduction, and it's like way behind your overhealth. So keep that in mind. It is a neat interaction. This is more of a survival thing, but it has more uses than just like surviving for like a very long time. Slicing Spree, so good. 5% movement speed on its own, right? And then while you're within 12 meters of an enemy that's wounded, gain 5% more movement speed and 10% attack speed. Now, you guys already know how I feel about attack speed. I already talked about those in like the previous things. But if you go something like Royal Bullets, you are immediately in Slicing Spree because this is within like 15 meters. You just like walk a little before because you're a little faster. And then now you are suddenly even faster, 10% movement speed. So if you're doing a rushdown style build, I definitely recommend Slicing Spree. If you're playing more of the poke game, you might not need this. Now going to the epic survivals. Bloodbound. The last enemy to deal a final blow to you is revealed when nearby. Deal 10% more damage to them and take 10% reduced damage from them. This one is interesting. If there's one singular person doing all of the damage, right? You can technically see where they are constantly and then reduce the damage from them by 10%, which is quite a bit, and you do 10% more to them, right? My issue with this one is it says deal a final blow. If that person does 99% of the damage and then a Mercy pulls out her Glock and gets the final hit, all of a sudden she's the person revealed to you and you take less damage from her. So that's my issue with Bloodbound. I don't like it. I would not go this. Genesis Vial. The first time you die each round, revive. This is a surprise factor. Just don't expect to die though. I don't like this. This is more of a like surprise factor kind of thing. Maybe like you go with those other things. It's like whenever you respawn, X and Y Z happens, or you have like a Mercy and you just kind of like want to stall the point. I don't know. I don't like it. You do you, boo. Divine Intervention. When you take more than 100 damage at once, restore 20% of damage taken and start regenerating your shields. If you have a problem with Reinhardt charges, Orisa javelins, Sigma rocks, Junkrat spam, this is kind of nice. However, my issue with this one as well is like 20% of 100 is obviously 20, but you still take that 80 damage. Or like the 80% of the damage, and so like Sigma's rock stuns you, and so you take like 80% of that damage, and unless you're going like cushion padding, then you'll just end up dying. If you go both of these guys, it's nice, but then again you're investing a lot of cash to not die, but you're not killing anything, so it's kind of like a survival build kind of situation. So grain of salt, but viable, right? Moving on. Gloom Gauntlet. It says 15% melee damage, but it only means your like fist or jagged blade melee. It does not mean carnage. It does not mean rampage, and that makes me very upset because those two are also considered melee damage, but they don't get this 15% damage increase. But yeah, melee damage grants 10% movement speed and restores 5% of max life over 2 seconds. The issue with this one is I tried making a build around Gloom Gauntlets where I just run around stabbing people, and the 5 health over 2 seconds is the issue. If it was 5 health over 1 second, or like 10% health over like 2 seconds or whatever, you'd get more health out of it. But it's not amazing. So maybe someone can come up with a Gloom Gauntlet Gut Punch build, but even then there's not enough melee support for me to endorse this, so I will personally pass, but you do you, boo. Martian Mender, 10% cooldown reduction is really nice, and restore 3% of your life every 1 second. If you're going for a survival build, this one's also nice, but unlike the other survival stuff, the 10% cooldown reduction is super helpful, which is why I kind of like this one. 3% of, let's say, like 500 something. Let's just say it's 500. is 15 health per second, and over time it will end up even being like a Zenyatta orb essentially on you at all times, or like a Lucio healing on you at all times. So it is kind of nice for a survival build. Consider it. Overdrive Core. Once per life, if you take damage that would reduce you to below 30% maximum life, first gain 300 decaying overhealth. This one's a survival one of like, um, if you're going to die, maybe live, whatever. And it's like, it's situational at best. I think that if you are below 30% max life and you gain that overhealth, it's good, but it's once per life. I might need to experiment more with this. I do see a potential build with it, but it's more of a backup rather than the actual solution, if that makes sense. So this one would need more study, I think, but the 10% weapon power is the only thing that I'm thinking that is a saving grace. Phantasmic Flux. You get 10% power and 50% lifesteal on both weapon and ability. And when you're at full health, lifesteal grants up to 100 overhealth. I'm going to be honest, I've never gotten that overhealth. I'm always constantly taking damage. But overall, this one is a very nice, cheapish, actually very cheap for an epic item. So I do recommend this guy. This is a nice flex build, which I go flex a lot, so I do like it. Rüstung von Wilhelm, 15% health, armor, and shields, and while below 30% health, gain 10% damage reduction. If you are going for a survival build of like lasting a long time versus like a Zarya Mei kind of thing that like always like walls you off, right? This guy is kind of a necessary because just stacking damage reductions plus if you also like Vitality, whatever, and like hydraulic Crusader hydraulics, these guys will run out once you run out of armor, but then you have this guy to also reduce damage, and it ends up being super nice. So please consider Rüstung von Wilhelm on a survival build, not on like a regular glass cannon build. Vanadium Injection. So this one says when you have your ultimate charge, you gain a bunch of different things. Seems nice, but there's only one niche use for this, and that is if the enemy team is running Zarya, Mei, Kiriko, Moira, Reaper. If the entire enemy team can cleanse your ultimate, there's no point in using the ultimate. So you can go Vanadium Injection as long as you can get your ult really fast, and then you get a bunch of different buffs. Now, I do think that it, like, unless you get your ult charge incredibly fast, I don't think this is worth it. But it is an option in case you're like, if it's like round 7 and you really don't know what else to spend it on, this guy's an option. Nebula Conduit. Prevent 50% of incoming damage and instead take it as prevented damage over 3 seconds. This is a hidden gem because 15% incoming damage does not care if it's like 100 immediate damage. It doesn't care if it's like constant pew 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 pew, right? It basically turns all of that 50% damage into your own wound damage, and you can heal your own wounds. So it does reduce your healing a little bit, and especially like if like the enemy has like a damage player that's like shooting you constantly like a soldier, you do get that damage passive reduction. But I do think that like this one for a survival build is pretty nice, so consider it. I don't know how to pronounce that word. Reduction field. If you take damage, gain 0.5% damage reduction for 1 second, up to 20 times. If they shoot you with a beam constantly, this just ends up becoming a 10% damage reduction. It is not worth it. You do get like that damage reduction, but like if like a Reinhardt smacking you, you get like no damage reduction. And so if the entire enemy team is beams, go for it. If it's like a Mei, Zarya, Moira, and in the future like Symmetra, I don't know. Otherwise, I don't think this is worth it. Sav Scraps, Carnage and Jagged Blade impact damage grants overhealth equal to 40% of damage dealt. If you go Chop Chop or a Come Up Gracie build, this one's kind of nice. You do give yourself overhealth, which, you know, if like they have an enemy Ana, goes over the purple. And so it's kind of like a backup wound damage in case they have an Ana that's just kind of screwing you over and over again. So keep that in mind. And it's also based on impact damage. Well, yeah, impact damage. So they can't cleanse this, if it makes sense. They can phase out of it so they don't get hit to begin with, but they can't cleanse it. Thick Skull. While casting Rampage or Carnage, gain 7% damage reduction. This one's nice if you're going Chop Chop, so you can get a constant damage reduction. Otherwise, like I wouldn't make like a Rampage build or something like that, you know. So, and I think if you go not Chop Chop, like you're just going Soaring Stone, I don't know if the damage reductions are worth it, because usually they'll like phase out of it or something like that. Just go for like raw damage at that point. Undying Loyalty. This one says Commanding Shout gives extra overhealth, and then allies affected by Commanding Shout are healed for 5% of Junker Queen's life. If you go a survival build, this one's kind of a necessary. I know that it's based on Commanding Shout, right? But if you see a Kiriko clone on the enemy team, you can also kill her, and that technically counts as like an elimination for Let's Go Win. Therefore, you can shout again. I think Bob also technically counts, but Bob has more health than the clone does. You're because of the change of the shout reduced for you for 1 second and it's increased for your allies for 1 second, you are healing your team for a ton. And healing your team also gives you ultimate charge, which you can consider. So I think that's very nice. But anyway, that is my opinion on every item in the game for Junker Queen. I still have to do a little bit of research on some of the builds. I will get to those in another video. Thanks you guys for watching. Hopefully this helps. Bye.